this is what the end result is.
We don't have enough nurses for these patients.
I can't breathe! George Floyd!
I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax return.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal!
The first American president ever to be impeached twice.
To understand how profoundly things changed in 2020, you only need look at America's unemployment rate. In February, a historic low, 3.5%. By April, 14.8%. It had quadrupled in 2 months because of the pandemic. The pandemic's effect on the economy essentially sent the financial capital of the United States, the biggest economy in the world, dark, New York, as it was struck early and hard with coronavirus. Thousands dying, the economy sent into a kind of panic mode, and Donald Trump, the president, really showing, looking all at sea at the time because of his emphasis on the economy. He was spending a lot of time telling Americans essentially, don't panic, this will be fine, we will be okay, trying to talk the economy back up, knowing the economy was inextricably tied to his fortunes in a presidential election year. But Americans knew looking on that things weren't fine, that many of them were dying, becoming ill, many dying. This was a big, big problem. And ultimately, of course, 400,000 would die in the United States from the virus while Donald Trump was president, and over 1 million would ultimately die before the pandemic would be brought to heel in the United States. So it was a profound change for Donald Trump, and in many respects his presidency never recovered.
The president of Poland welcomed to the White House Donald Trump's first face-to-face meeting with the world leader since pandemic lockdowns, upbeat about a vaccine and treatments.
You're going to have a big surprise, a beautiful surprise, sooner than anybody would think.
As the coronavirus is surging, more than 36,000 new cases today in the US, the highest one-day total yet.
We are not out of this pandemic.
States setting new records, governors sounding the alarm.
Because the spread is so rampant right now, there's never a reason for you to have to leave your home unless you do need to go out.
The biggest spike among younger people.
What we're seeing in Florida is really rapid transmission in that 18 to 34 age group.
Doctors blaming complacency.
People started to act like it was summer. They started to act like they wanted to go back to parties and do lots of big things like that. And it's coming back and it's biting us, quite frankly.
In Michigan, at least 34 cases linked to crowds at one bar. The young not just catching it, 17-year-old student Carson Davis died yesterday of COVID complications. New York, hard hit early, now requiring anyone arriving from current hotspots to quarantine for 2 weeks.
We worked very hard to get the viral transmission rate down. We don't want to see it go up.
As frontline health workers worry, the worst is to come.
We don't have enough nurses for these patients.
In the United States, Paul Kadak, 7 News.
Well, I was reporting in the United States for what would be the last couple of years of the Trump presidency, but also the start of the COVID pandemic. State by state, it was different. In California, there were a lot of restrictions. In Florida, they were avoiding restrictions whenever they could. You'd have people talking about a planned demic, refusing to wear masks, and it's a blow against freedom. There's sort of politics triumphed over biology in a lot of the sort of Republican states and areas. Local law enforcement would refuse to enforce things like mask wearing. So it was just chaotic. And obviously, there are state boundaries and there are county lines and that sort of thing, but a pandemic and a disease doesn't respond to imaginary lines. And sadly, a few of the stats showed that those that did not take it seriously, that's where there were more cases. And sadly, it seems more deaths.
4 months to the election, Donald Trump and rival Joe Biden were in key battleground states, each putting a different face on the coronavirus crisis.
Deaths are down. We have one of the lowest mortality rates. We've done an incredible, historic job.
He's like a child who can't believe this has happened to him. And his job isn't to whine about it. His job is to do something about it, to lead.
Biden boosted by new polls showing him leading in 6 crucial states, which helped Donald Trump win in 2016 as the virus numbers worsen, especially in California, Florida, Texas, where today the governor paused reopening. New research predicts 60,000 more COVID deaths here in the US by October, but it also says that more than half of those deaths could be prevented if people were required to wear masks.
The only option that we have right now is to order masks in public.
But calls to cover up have polarised this country, a local sheriff rejecting a statewide order to wear them.
Don't be a sheep.
And a push to require masks in Palm Beach, Florida sparked outrage.
This is a planned-demic. This is totally political and you know it.
That mask is killing people.
I don't wear a mask for the same reason I don't wear underwear. Things gotta breathe.
The vote for masks passed unanimously. With infections on the rise in 36 states, today politicians were warned the virus is out of control.
We are now having 40,000+ new cases a day. I would not be surprised if we go up to 100,000 a day if this does not turn around.
States are winding back freedoms, concerned about 4th of July crowds. But in Texas, bar owners are fighting the order to close down.
Come and get it!
Donald Trump tweeting, "As I watch the pandemic spread its ugly face, I become more and more angry at China." Rival Joe Biden blasting the president's handling of the crisis.
Fix the shortage of PPE for our healthcare workers before you tee off another round of golf. It's almost July, and it seems like our wartime president has surrendered.
And despite growing appeals,
please, 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 wear a face covering when you go out in public.
You have a right in America not to wear a mask.
defiance continues.
Bro, you gotta wear a mask, bro.
A man shoving his way into a store without one. An argument over social distancing in a steakhouse turns into this. The fight against the virus has a long way to go.
When it comes to the 2020 election, COVID was part of everything. It was part of life. The US, like every other country, had gone into some kind of shutdown. One of the key differences in the US was the pandemic, what from the start was political. It was initially talked about as something that, the Democrats worried too much about it. And given Donald Trump and his team were hoping that the economy was going to be a big part of his election pitch, suddenly with the pandemic, things shutting down, unemployment rising, it was a disaster for them that the US went into recession. The pandemic, again, reflecting divisions in America. Republican-run states versus Democrat-run states approached it differently in terms of the level they had mask wearing, the level they had shutdowns of their school system and that sort of thing. But what was inescapable was just the growing number of cases and the growing number of deaths.
Deadly deja vu, 2 states reporting their largest single-day death toll since the pandemic began. Texas and Florida. Despite that,
we're going to different parts of Florida today.
The president campaigning in the Sunshine State, a critical battleground that's currently battling the nation's most significant surge of COVID-19.
Before the COVID came to us, the flu, the virus, the China virus, whatever you'd like to call it, it's got many different names. But before it hit, we were doing really well.
But now, as cases continue to rise, his popularity continues to fall. 2/3 of Americans disapproving of Donald Trump's pandemic response.
We're working to safely and responsibly reopen our country, reopen our schools, get our country going again. 100%.
Florida Disney will reopen tomorrow.
Lots of social distancing, lots of hand sanitizer.
As nearby NBA stars are now living inside a bubble.
If we had any sort of significant spread at all within our campus, we would be shut down again.
The president has been forced to abandon his own reopening plans, postponing a rally scheduled for tomorrow. His campaign citing safety concerns, blaming not the coronavirus, but a tropical storm. The president created a storm of his own late today, commuting the sentence of ally Roger Stone. The former campaign advisor was just days out from reporting to a federal prison to serve a 40-month term for obstructing a congressional investigation into the Trump 2016 campaign. In the United States, Amelia Brace, 7 News.
I was there basically for Trump's entire first presidency, so I was there for 4 years from the start of 2017. So it was really when the case numbers and also the deaths started to spike that opinion shifted and people started to think, hey, maybe he's not taking this seriously enough. Even conservative commentators, people on Fox, Tucker Carlson travelled to see him to say, hey, I reckon you need to take this a bit more seriously. It was dire in the US, being in New York and seeing this city closed down, but also mass graves and those hospitals set up in Central Park to treat people. There was no doubt then that this was something we'd never seen or something we hadn't seen for 100 years. And it didn't seem that he was willing to drop his usual antics to take it seriously. He was still being Donald Trump. He wore a campaign hat to visit rescue workers. He was shaking hands. He was still holding rallies. He was still in groups. And it did feel like he wasn't taking the health advice seriously, or he was so determined to keep the economy open that he didn't want to take the health advice seriously.
It's a sight not seen since COVID-19 breached America's shores. Donald Trump publicly and proudly wearing a mask emblazoned with the presidential seal.
Thank you.
Bowing to public pressure to send a public message while visiting the front line of the battle against coronavirus.
I think when you're in a hospital, especially in that particular setting where you're talking to a lot of soldiers and people that in some cases just got off the operating tables, I think it's a great thing to wear a mask.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention called for Americans to wear masks in April, but the Commander-in-Chief resisted the advice, viewing it as unnecessary, given he's tested for the virus daily.
I've never been against masks, but I do believe they have a time and a place.
The timing, no accident. The photo op coming as the United States recorded its highest one-day spike in new cases. More than 68,000 people infected. Death rates, once declining, now trending up.
We have areas that flamed up and they're going to be fine over a period of time.
With the death toll rising and case numbers skyrocketing, pressure is mounting on both the president and state leaders to mandate the use of masks nationwide. Existing restrictions already outraging some.
And I'm not doing it because I woke up in a free country.
You guys are violating federal law, you get that?
Authorities argue it's not a matter of breaching rights, but doing what's right.
Donald Trump returning to the coronavirus stage.
Well, thank you very much.
But unlike previous briefings with his task force, the president was alone with a somber message.
Will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is.
Acknowledging the virus he's often said will simply disappear is surging.
We have embers and fires, and we have big fires.
And for the first time since the pandemic began,
I have the mask right here, and I carry it, and I will use it gladly.
Directly urging Americans to do the same.
When you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect.
On message until asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, charged with procuring young girls for abuse by Jeffrey Epstein.
I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly.
A stunning statement in an otherwise presidential address. This pandemic is not only reshaping America, but the election campaign too. COVID-19 is undoubtedly the greatest challenge of Donald Trump's presidency, and he knows this is now his strongest platform to speak to voters.
Do you want the American people to judge you on the ballot in November by how you've handled this pandemic so far?
This, among other things.
Rival Joe Biden sharpening his attack.
You know, he's quit on you, and he's quit on this country.
An early morning tweet suggesting a late election, the president asking whether he should delay the November poll until people can properly, securely and safely vote.
What will happen in November? It's a mess.
Donald Trump claiming any result would be delayed and that mail-in ballots are vulnerable to fraud and foreign interference.
Everyone knows it. Smart people know it. Stupid people may not know it.
All while he knows he doesn't have the power to change the date. The Constitution decrees only Congress can, and it never has.
Never in the history of the country, through wars, depressions, and the Civil War, have we ever not had a federally scheduled election on time. And we'll find a way to do that again this November 3rd.
His political allies and adversaries immediately rejecting the suggestion.
Few elections have been as urgent on so many levels as this one.
Democrats are accusing the president of simply trying to distract from economic news out today that America's just suffered its worst 3-month collapse on record. The president hitting back, accusing Democrats of intentionally keeping the economy shut down to cost him re-election.
COVID-careful campaigning in a Corvette. Events, stunts are now online. Joe Biden behind the wheel talking American-made.
This is just boom.
Another staple, the big nomination acceptance speech, gone. Biden now won't be at his party's convention. Trump looking at doing his speech from the White House.
I think it would be a very convenient location. It would be by far the least expensive location.
But critics say that breaches a long-held tradition.
You don't have political events in the Capitol. You don't have political events in the White House.
With no rallies, each side sniping via social media.
Every day that Donald Trump fails to get this virus under control is another day our economy falls further and further behind.
Joe Biden sits in his basement, alone, hiding, diminished.
Biden bristling when asked if he'd taken a test for cognitive decline.
Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh?
And for the first time, Facebook pulled one of Donald Trump's posts of him saying children were almost immune from coronavirus.
If you look at children, I mean, they're able to throw it off very easily.
Facebook called it harmful misinformation, the coronavirus touching everything, with 90 days until America votes.
Donald Trump has finally gone to war with the U.S. Postal Service.
In a deluge of campaign ads, this is the latest political minefield.
Donald Trump plans to disrupt absentee ballots and vote by mail.
The president locked in a feud with Democrats over an economic relief package and funding for the U.S. Postal Service, critical for the upcoming election.
Would you be willing to accept the $25 billion for the Postal Service?
Sure, if they give us what we want. And it's not what I want, it's what the American people want.
The president reluctant to fund the service, claiming rampant voter fraud. His opponents say he's subverting democracy.
What we've never seen before is a president say, I'm going to try to actively kneecap the Postal Service.
Republican donor and U.S. Postmaster General now under investigation, accused of undermining the Postal Service and cost-cutting in an election year. The service is warning it may not meet mail-in voting deadlines in crucial swing states like Pennsylvania, Florida and Michigan.
Why are they creating obstacles to us voting? Well, the answer is because when we vote, things change.
For months, he's railed against a mail-in election, but today Donald Trump requested his own ballot to vote remotely. After a week of campaigning, the president shifted focus briefly tonight to a family crisis, landing in New York City for a mercy dash to his brother's bedside. Robert Trump's condition believed to be serious.
Hopefully he'll be all right, but he's having a hard time.
Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't.
Barack Obama unleashing on his successor.
He has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone.
Democracy itself, he warned, is in danger.
Tonight, I'm asking you to believe in Joe and Kamala's ability to lead this country out of these dark times and build it back better.
As he spoke, Donald Trump tweeted, why did he refuse to endorse Slow Joe until it was all over?
They did such a bad job that I stand before you as president.
4 years after losing to him, Hillary Clinton urged Democrats not to let history repeat.
Remember back in 2016 when Trump asked, what do you have to lose? Well, now we know. Our health care, our jobs, our loved ones.
A night history was made. Kamala Harris, the first black and Asian American nominated for vice president, to a virtual crowd.
My mother taught me that service to others gives life purpose and meaning.
Straight to business for the now Biden-Harris campaign. Tomorrow it will be all eyes on Joe Biden here in Wilmington for what will be the speech of his political life, having the national spotlight to try and convince Americans to choose him over Donald Trump. Clearly, with his experience, Joe Biden had been around a very long time. People knew who he was, but I suppose there was some lingering doubts about whether he was enough to get people who were undecided to vote for him instead of Donald Trump. And I think to drive that home, obviously what was crucial is someone who, like Barack Obama, who was so popular, endorsing his former vice president, and Hillary Clinton as well, making sure that everyone knew that they were both backing him. And I think this was part of the effort to say that if we want to beat Donald Trump, he's the man. And part of it was that we have to beat Donald Trump for the good of the country.
This convention will come to order!
Socially distanced, the Republicans' roll call with an inevitable result. The only surprise, the president appearing in person in Charlotte.
Now, if you want to really drive him crazy, you say 12 more years.
After panning Democrats for a gloomy convention, starting his with a warning.
The only way they can take this election away from us is if this is a rigged election.
Again claiming mail-in voting would mean widespread fraud.
They're using COVID to defraud the American people.
As his Postmaster General was telling Congress attacks on the Postal Service should stop.
I have put word around to different people to plead that this is not helpful.
Donald Trump stopping for crowds at an airport.
This has been a real love fest.
Visiting a food bank with daughter Ivanka, firing up supporters.
It was spectacular. It was energizing. He's not sleeping in his basement.
Donald Trump is breaking with tradition to appear every night at this week's convention, and when he's not appearing and speaking, it'll be his family members in the spotlight.
Embracing the man who represents a bright and beautiful future for all.
Talking law and order, the couple who pulled guns on Black Lives Matter protesters.
Your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
Frontline workers and released hostages.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great stories.
A reminder it's not just his party and his campaign, but this week it's his show. On the hallowed steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
We are the dream keepers.
America's race struggles laid bare.
We will not dress up this genocide and boo and call it police brutality.
The sister of Jacob Blake shot 7 times by police, joining thousands to march through the nation's capital.
The second civil rights movement has begun and history is in the making.
The event organised after the killing of George Floyd while in police custody.
My brother cannot be a voice today. We have to be that voice. We have to be the change. And we have to be his legacy. Thank you from the Floyd family.
Marking the anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic address.
I have a dream.
57 years to the day.
We stand and march for love, and we will fulfill my grandfather's dream.
I believe some have chosen the answer with chaos, including the current occupant in the White House today.
The president later quoting the civil rights leader at a political rally in New Hampshire.
We stand for so much, including Martin Luther King's dream of a nation where our children are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. You know that.
Blaming the media for the country's racial tension.
They stoked the flames, and they know it.
Today's protest comes at the end of a summer of unrest in America and on the eve of an election. Today's rallying cry, not just for justice reform, but to vote.
We will stand in the polls all day long.
Turned into a battleground after the police shooting of Jacob Blake. With 2 men shot and killed, fears of a new flashpoint in Kenosha, a visit by President Donald Trump, the state governor and city mayor urging him to stay away.
This community is trying to heal, we're trying to pull together, and I think that at this point in time it's not the best idea.
The president's on the side of law enforcement and the rule of law.
Blake's family blaming the president for the turmoil.
How could they not be feeding on violence when our man in the White House is steady drumming it up?
After yesterday's clashes between protesters in Portland, where a man was shot dead, the president unleashed a barrage of tweets attacking Portland's mayor as incompetent, a fool, urging bring in the National Guard. The mayor firing back.
Do you seriously wonder, Mr. President, why this is the first time in decades that America has seen this level of violence? It's you who have created the hate and the division.
With fears now of payback for the shooting, presidential rival Joe Biden condemning the violence, whether on the left or the right, and I challenge Donald Trump to do the same.
Joe Biden back on the campaign trail and the attack.
He's rooting for chaos and violence. The simple truth is, Donald Trump failed to protect America. So now, he's trying to scare America.
Despite some stumbles.
COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives, when you think about it.
He landed this punch on a toxic Donald Trump.
He keeps telling us that he was president, you'd feel safe. Well, he is president.
Biden's strategy is to surrender to the left-wing mob, which is exactly what he's doing. I don't think he even knows what he's doing.
Insisting his own backers were peaceful.
Paint is not, and paint is a defensive mechanism. Paint is not bullets.
Defending the 17-year-old supporter who fatally shot 2 protesters in Kenosha.
I guess he was in very big trouble. He probably would have been killed.
As the president heads to the city, ignoring pleas not to, backup for local police is also on its way.
Well, this is what the president will be greeted with when he arrives here in Kenosha tomorrow, a city still barricaded and boarded up under the watchful eye of the National Guard.
With fears the visit will increase tensions.
It could also increase enthusiasm, and it could increase love and respect for our country.
He'll meet police and business owners, but not the family of police shooting victim Jacob Blake.
There's nothing to talk about. I'm not playing. This is not politics. This is about the life of my son.
In a state famous for its gambling, Donald Trump's betting big.
52 days from now, we're going to win Nevada, and we're going to win 4 more years in the White House.
The crucial swing state rally at a backup location after planned events were cancelled by the venues because of COVID rules limiting gatherings to 50 people. The campaign insisting the crowd was temperature checked with masks provided.
Joe Biden cannot lead our country because he doesn't really believe in our country. Right now, I don't think he believes in anything. He just wants to go to sleep, that's all. Please, darling, I want to go to bed. I'm exhausted. I made one speech yesterday.
As a new poll here put him 4 points behind his Democrat rival, who slammed Trump's gatherings. Nevadans don't need more bluster from the president, he said in a statement, and don't need his reckless rallies that ignore the realities of COVID-19 and endanger public health. Counting down to their first debate face-off, Trump's also accused the former vice president of enhanced past performances.
I think there's probably, possibly drugs involved. That's what I hear. I mean, there's possibly drugs. I don't know how you can go from being so bad where you can't even get out a sentence.
Expect the verbal sparring to intensify this week as both Donald Trump and Joe Biden head to multiple battleground states. The president also heading here to California to be briefed on the state's wildfire disaster.
How you doing, man?
Brief small talk, handshakes ruled out.
Looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The pleasantries ended there.
Why would you answer that
because
question?
The question
is, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen,
this is so unprecedented.
That on a Supreme Court pick. Turning to the COVID response, it only got worse.
This is the same man
it's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
By Easter this would be gone away. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it.
That was said sarcastically, you know that.
A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe.
Joe Biden attacking a rival now with a 4-year presidential record.
You're the worst president America has ever had. Everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
Joe, you're the liar.
As the former vice president's family was dragged in.
The mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true.
Mr. President,
the only guy that
let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
the media.
It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Moderator Chris Wallace at times struggling to maintain control.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating
worst
him,
part
not
of
me.
Obama.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask.
As the president dodged questions on his tax.
Show us your tax
I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
You'll see it as soon as it's finished.
Donald Trump steered discussion instead to law and order.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go
yes,
ahead.
I'm a
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly.
And then this challenge to condemn white supremacists.
Do it. Say it.
And give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden will face each other again for 2 more presidential debates, but with so many Americans voting early and by mail because of coronavirus here in Cleveland tonight, it was perhaps their best chance to make a lasting impression.
A hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck.
That was show. I think the president absolutely dominated this debate. Quite frankly, he could have been the moderator.
It's been an interesting hour and a half.
Sometimes there's a question about what you get out of a presidential debate. And I suppose what they got out of the debates that we saw was Donald Trump being Donald Trump. He was loud, he was talking over people, full of bluster. I mean, him at his rallies, which his supporters lapped up as the man that they know and that they love. But for undecided voters who were who were a bit sort of half and half, I'm not quite sure how many people would have been convinced by that or would have warmed to him with that performance. And perhaps for some of those, Joe Biden, I think when exasperated, told Donald Trump to be quiet, might have started leaning towards him at that point. I think that was sort of a clear moment that sort of showed the difference between the two.
Dusting off a debate hangover.
I think it was just a national embarrassment.
2 candidates bitterly divided on stage and off.
But I thought it was a great evening. It was an exciting evening. I see the ratings were very high. And it was good to be there, felt very comfortable.
A president's unflinching confidence, a country grappling with a debate that devolved into a whole lot of noise.
The question is,
Justice, radical left.
Will you shut up?
Interruptions and insults.
It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Don't ever use the word smart with me.
Donald Trump today facing questions over his comments about right-wing extremists.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. I don't know who the Proud Boys are. I mean, you'll have to give me a definition because I really don't know who they are. I can only say they have to stand down, let law enforcement do their work.
After the debate debacle here in Cleveland, organisers admit there will have to be changes before round 2. One they're looking at, cutting off a candidate's microphone if they flout the rules. Last night's moderator, a veteran Fox News host, on the back foot.
Mr. President.
You're talking about 2 million people.
You're not
President.
Calling the debate a terrible missed opportunity. I never dreamt that it would go off the tracks the way it did.
Chris Wallace says, don't do that. That's not. Can you believe this guy? I was debating 2 people last night.
The president back on his own stage tonight, claiming victory.
The verdict is in, and they say that
We, all of us won big last night.
In terms of debates, there's no better show on television than a debate with Donald Trump in it. He's incredibly entertaining. He says things that you just think you can't say in a political debate, and people love it. People love tuning in. People would sit in bars to watch a presidential debate. It was primetime viewing, and it was highly entertaining to see them go head to head. He was very good on that sort of stage. He enjoyed riling up the crowd. He liked being in front of an audience, and you could see that he kind of had Biden's measure when it came to those live debates. You could live fact check him and he'd just disagree and move on to his next point or his next insult or his next quip. And often they were quite funny and entertaining, so people kind of didn't mind. People didn't pull him up and say, oh, hang on, what's Mr. Biden saying? They'd let him go a bit because they know that it's TV gold.
So we'll be seeing what happens over those next couple of days.
Not out of the woods.
And over the next few days, we're going to probably know for sure.
But showing strength.
So I just want to tell you that I'm starting to feel good.
The president resolute.
I'll be back. I think I'll be back soon.
Addressing the nation from inside Walter Reed Military Hospital, while outside his chief of staff offered a more blunt assessment, telling reporters the next 48 hours will be critical in terms of his care. We're still not on a clear path to a full recovery.
Yesterday morning, we were real concerned with that. He had a fever, and his blood oxygen level had dropped rapidly.
The Commander-in-Chief's medical team emerging on the hospital's front steps this morning, unable or unwilling to confirm reports he'd been treated with supplemental oxygen.
He's not needed any this morning today at all. He's not on oxygen right now, that's right. Right now he is not on oxygen. All indicators are that he'll remain off of oxygen going forward.
He may be off the campaign trail, but that hasn't deterred the president's supporters, holding a Trump-style vigil tonight outside Walter Reed Hospital.
We support you. Even though you're sick, we know you're going to get better. We know that we're still going to vote for you.
Mr. President, you might be down right now. You might be weak right now, but it does not mean you are all down and out.
This Rose Garden reception still the suspected source of a growing Republican Party COVID cluster. Trump advisor Chris Christie among the latest to test positive, the former New Jersey governor by the president's side as they prepared for the first debate.
No one was wearing masks in the room when we were prepping the president during that period of time. The group was about 5 or 6 people in total.
Tonight, he's in hospital.
You wear a mask to protect the person next to you.
Joe Biden speaking to workers with a battleground map to himself for now.
I look forward to finishing up the campaign the way it was started.
Things got a lot better, I think, like most countries saw. In summer, the case numbers dropped. People started to come out a little bit more. I know in LA we were allowed to eat on the sidewalk, footpath, which is very exciting for us. So it did feel like maybe we were through it. Maybe we were through the worst of it in terms of COVID and the riots and just the huge division. But there was very much a feeling like the country needed to heal. And I think that's why in those months we did start to see Joe Biden polling well, because while he might not have been the most impressive candidate, he was calm. He used the language about healing, about coming together. I'll be the president for all Americans, which was very different to what we were seeing from Trump. And that's how I felt in those last few months, that people were yearning for calm, for healing, for things to just be on the straight and steady for a while. Even if you look at the final weeks and months of their campaign, Biden was effectively in his basement. It was a one-man band, not even really saying much, kind of just waiting and hoping that the other side fell over. Meanwhile, Trump returned to rallies. While there were still cases, there was still COVID. He ended up getting COVID in October and spent a few days in hospital and returned to the campaign trail, breaching the health advice to isolate for 2 weeks, not long after. It was chalk and cheese between the two campaigns, and I think maybe that's why slightly more people chose the calmer approach.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
Donald Trump, COVID positive.
I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
A contagious president back in the Oval Office touting the benefits of an experimental antibody treatment.
I went in, I wasn't feeling so hot, and within a very short period of time, they gave me Regeneron.
An unapproved drug cocktail still in clinical trials.
I heard about this drug. I said, let me take it. It was my suggestion. I said, let me take it. To me, it wasn't therapeutic. It just made me better. Okay? I call that a cure.
Which he insisted would be sent to hundreds of thousands of Americans for free.
It was China's fault, and China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to this country. China's going to pay a big price, what they've done to the world.
Coronavirus centre stage as America's vice presidential candidates faced off. The pair divided by plexiglass and the administration's pandemic response.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country.
Stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we're going to have a vaccine.
A more civilised contest, none of the fireworks of the presidential stoush.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
If I may finish, Senator.
A fly in Mike Pence's hair lighting up the internet, the only off-script moment as the well-drilled deputies dodged key questions, including how to handle their much older running mate being unable to carry out their duties. Tens of millions of Americans were watching this one and only vice presidential debate, including the candidates' bosses, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, not in the room, but still joining in. Mike Pence is doing great. She is a gaffe machine, Trump tweeted. Biden declaring his partner smart, experienced and a proven fighter as the leaders prepare for their next clash, set for next week.
A COVID comeback from a distant White House balcony.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for your prayers. I know you've been praying, and I was in that hospital. I was watching down over so many people.
The president 23 days out from polling day and fighting more than infection.
We got to vote these people into oblivion. Vote them into oblivion.
Billed as a peaceful law and order protest, supporters mostly masked but packed into the South Lawn.
Thank you.
Promised COVID wonder drugs, the treatment Donald Trump credits for his swift return.
We're healing the sick and we're going to recover, and the vaccine is coming out very, very quickly in record time.
Flesh-coloured bandages, a reminder of his recent hospital stay. The campaign restart kept to under 20 minutes brief by the president's standards.
We did it in a safe way. We all wore masks, everybody kind of social distance, but he looked good.
I think the president is doing what he needs to do to stay away.
Staying away and insisting COVID was going away.
It's going to disappear. It is disappearing.
But it's not disappearing. In fact, coronavirus cases are on the rise in dozens of states, and medical experts are still warning against large gatherings.
It's happening in homes and social occasions and people gathering and taking their mask off.
Pitching for support in Pennsylvania.
And what you got here?
Joe Biden with 6 negative COVID tests this week.
I think it's important the president makes sure two things. One, that he is clear, he is not a spreader.
Trump's doctor later saying tests found he's no longer considered a transmission risk to others.
Get out and vote, and I love you. Thank you.
74 and a spring in his step, Donald Trump casting himself as the young man in this race.
He has no idea what he's saying. How the hell do you lose to a guy like this? Is this possible?
Publicly eviscerating his 77-year-old rival.
He had no idea what the hell he was doing, folks.
Joe Biden, the target of a brutal political character assassination.
He's always been a dummy. If he was a nice guy, I wouldn't hit him like this. I'm running against the single worst candidate in the history of presidential politics.
The mocking followed up by this from the president's Twitter account. A doctored image picturing Biden in a wheelchair in a nursing home.
Who's better for seniors?
This on the same day the Trump campaign made a direct pitch to over 65s.
The clear choice, Donald Trump.
A demographic that could swing this election.
You're expendable. You're virtually nobody. That's how he sees it.
The numbers not lost on Joe Biden in an actual nursing home today with this appeal.
It has prevented Florida seniors and people all across the country from getting the relief that they need.
He's shot He abused you, he crushed you, your dreams.
This is Trump's 6th visit to Pennsylvania in as many weeks, considered a must-win state to win the White House. The president's looking to put this virus behind him, but cases are surging.
Who has had it? Who has had it here? Who's had it? Yeah, a lot of people. Well, you're the people I want to say hello to because you're right now immune.
Donald Trump won this state 4 years ago, vowing he will again.
You damn well better vote for me, Pennsylvania.
In America's Midwest, Donald Trump tells a crowd his second term is in their hands.
We win Wisconsin. We win the whole ball game. I mean, what the hell do you think I'm doing here on a freezing night with 45-degree winds?
4 years ago, voters here abandoned the Democrats to deliver a Trump presidency, and nowhere more than in the cornfields of Howard County, Iowa.
The 40-point swing was the biggest in America.
Polls now predict a one-term presidency, but is the district that flipped further than any other for Donald Trump ready to flip back?
Better than most presidents, better than most.
He's a business person, and he looks at it that way.
Not these farming brothers.
I think he's been doing really good.
Nor the owner of Fat T's Cafe in town. He wants a rerun of 2016.
I actually jumped up and down, screaming very happily.
Howard County Democrats expect to claw back some ground, but say even in the eye of a third coronavirus surge, many will stick with the president.
You still have to keep the economy going, or more people are going to starve to death than die from the corona.
The therapeutics are unbelievable, and the cures, excuse me, I'm here.
Today's rallies defied local doctors who asked the president to scrap the events.
President Trump's rallies endanger public health, and they have become platforms for him to spread medically inaccurate information.
The president now has little time to stir some new momentum in his campaign. Just 16 days to the election, making it tougher. 23 million Americans have already voted. But in the Midwest, many of his original backers remain loyal to the Trump cause.
In his home state of Florida, a campaign stop to cast his own ballot.
Who did you vote for today?
I voted for a guy named Trump.
The president hitting the road early for a swing state trifecta, trailing in the polls, but trumpeting victory.
We're going to win the state of North Carolina. And hello, Circleville. We win Wisconsin, it's over.
Brushing off a third coronavirus surge and a record daily tally of 83,000 cases.
That's all I hear about now. That's all I hear. Turn on television, right? COVID, COVID. COVID, 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 COVID.
We took our zinc on the way here. We ate a vegetable egg sandwich. We are healthy.
I think it's real, but I don't think it's a big of an issue as they make it out to be.
Ohio seems to reflect the national mood better than any other state. Since 1964, it's voted for the presidential winner every time, and polls say Donald Trump is ahead here. As election day looms for both campaigns, it's not just about trying to get people on their side, it's about getting people to actually vote.
It's go time! It's go time now!
The Democrats deploying their most valuable player for the home stretch.
If you've already voted, what do you need to do? You've got to go help your friends and family make a plan to vote.
Relying on endorsements like these
Gotta hold on to what we got
to keep the momentum and the lead.
He would have been incredibly confident of re-election. As I mentioned, the economy was strong, jobs numbers were strong, and that's what he wanted to be known as, the art of the deal. He was a businessman who was getting the job done. Incumbents usually win a second term in America. There's only 2 that haven't, so he would have that confidence behind him. But he also would have felt like Teflon. None of these scandals were sticking. His approval rating wasn't dropping when these things were coming at him. So it did seem like he could do a lot of wrong, but couldn't be held accountable for doing anything wrong. He was divisive, absolutely, at that point, but nothing like the depths of what we saw in 2020. And it very much felt like his plan to be re-elected, and I think he thought quite easily, really fell to pieces when we heard about this virus. And you could tell, I think, from the start that his primary concern at first was that this was derailing the plan. It was an election year, and an election year in America starts in January. You have the primaries, you have the caucuses, and this just completely threw a spanner in the works for his plan. And he rallies, he brings the troops together. He's not a COVID-safe president naturally, just by the way he behaves. So how do you hold a giant rally when people aren't allowed out of their houses? His entire campaign plan was thrown up in the air.
He capped off a 3-rally day in one must-win state.
Who is going to vote for President Trump?
Blitzing Pennsylvania, arguing Joe Biden simply isn't fit.
He called me George. And then I hear the reporter sort of said, no, it's not George, Donald.
It's in response to this when his rivals seemingly appeared to forget Trump's name.
What kind of country we're going to be? 4 more years of Georgia.
Today, Biden hit the suburbs.
Don't jump! I need you!
An unannounced stop an hour away from the president, defending his low-key campaign.
It looks like we're not traveling. We're not putting on super spreaders.
As Trump hopped between 3 towns, promising this oil-rich pocket of America he'll protect fracking. In the final stretch of the campaign, Donald Trump is returning to a key message that helped get him elected in the first place: rebuilding America's economy, giving voters a choice between what he says is a Trump boom or a Biden bust.
We're thriving when we were really just flatlining.
Midnight in Michigan. Donald Trump makes his final pitch in Grand Rapids, the same place he ended his 2016 campaign.
And we're going to have another beautiful victory tomorrow.
But this time, he's the president, asking America to stay with him.
We can be a little bit superstitious, right? I think tomorrow's going to be one of the greatest wins in the history of politics.
Stamina stretching into the early hours of polling day after an election eve on a knife's edge.
I have like 5 of these to do today, so let's get going.
We're in a home stretch now. We're in a home stretch.
A political showdown now in voters' hands.
It's time for Donald Trump to pack his bags and go home.
We're going to win anyway. We're going to shove it.
National polls still have him behind.
I'm fighting to survive.
But Donald Trump is banking on a repeat of 2016.
Somebody said they're the shy voters. My people are not shy.
Jobs and economic recovery, the heart of his final 5-city strike.
You had the best 3 years that you've ever had under President Trump.
A frenzied final swing state push, but with close to 100 million early votes already cast, the unknown result remains under siege.
Please don't cheat, Governor. Please don't cheat. Because we're all watching. We're all watching you, Governor.
One more day.
Laser focused on key state Pennsylvania.
Lady Gaga's going to be speaking and I'm going to be singing.
The man who would be America's oldest president, 77-year-old Joe Biden, drafting star power for the young vote.
We're far from the shallow now.
Closing with the pandemic that's defined this campaign.
Last night, Trump went on to say he was going to fire Dr. Fauci. Well, I've got a better idea. Let's fire Trump and I'll hire Fauci.
In ordinary times, crowds would gather outside the White House on Election Day, but these are not ordinary times. The president's home is tonight surrounded by hundreds of metres of perimeter fencing. In the clearest sign yet, the police are bracing for civil unrest. The threat of post-poll chaos clear in city after city. Australians warned.
Hopefully there will not be a tip and go over to violent protest. Or unlawful activity, but I think it's probably a good thing people are getting prepared.
A bitter campaign that seems unlikely to end tomorrow.
What was inescapable was the growing number of cases, and per head of population, the US was starting to lead the world. By May, there had been 100,000 deaths. By September, there'd been 200,000 deaths. By the time the election was rolling around, there were 300,000 deaths. And that got to the point where Americans knew people. They knew family, they knew friends, they knew people in their town, their communities who had died, so this was no longer a hoax. And I think as those numbers were getting worse, people were saying, well, and the Democrats really pushed this, Donald Trump has failed to handle the pandemic, and we are suffering because of it, and our economy is suffering because of it. And I think that started resonating a lot more with voters.
He still won, maybe 2 states short of winning the White House. But Joe Biden tells supporters it's in the bag.
We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners.
Of the 50 states, 6 are still undecided.
We continue to feel, Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand.
Mail-in ballots breaking Democrat blue in the crucial election swing state Pennsylvania. Donald Trump had led by more than 600,000 votes on election night. Tonight, Joe Biden is poised to snatch the lead.
If Joe Biden gets Pennsylvania, it's game, set, match.
So it's very close in Pennsylvania, right? There's no question. And so that means it's going to take longer.
Longer too in Nevada, Joe Biden's edge holding for now, but he's losing ground in Arizona. The Trump team was furious when the friendly Fox network called it early for the Democrats.
So why is everybody rushing to close the book on the 2020 presidential race?
Before Election Day, 7 News watched this effort to rouse up early voters in Atlanta. Now those early votes look like delivering the Republican stronghold Georgia for the Democrats.
What are you doing?
Are we rolling people to the polls for free? F-R-E-E.
Early votes, but especially mail-in ballots, have infuriated the president, who says many of them are illegal.
He said that this was because of fraud and cheating. It is because of math.
Democracy is sometimes messy. It sometimes requires a little patience.
And cash to fight Team Trump in the courts. Joe Biden tweeting a plea for donations to wage the largest election protection effort in history.
In America, the vote is sacred.
This as America's pandemic agony deepens. 2 days now with cases above 100,000 a day. Joe Biden addressing the issue as though he's already in the White House.
Cases are on the rise nationwide, and we're nearing 240,000 deaths.
And telling followers the people will not be silenced, be bullied or surrender. Democrats are now hopeful that within a day or so, the presidency is theirs. In Wilmington, Delaware, Tim Lester, 7 News.
I spent 16 years working in Canberra in Parliament House, covering politics there, in particular the overseas missions and foreign visits by 5 of our prime ministers, and then came to the United States in 2020, specifically then to cover the election and stay on as a US correspondent, and I've been here ever since. Trump's allegations on voter fraud were actually quite scattered. There were a few particular themes. There was a claim, for example, that suitcases of votes had been brought in, that a voting room had been cleared of officials so that these suitcases of pre-prepared votes could be brought in and were then counted. That was totally discredited, by the way, as time went on. A particular favourite, though, in terms of the claims, and this was pushed particularly by Rudy Giuliani, was on the voting machines prepared by a company called Dominion Voting Systems, which they said had been made for Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and was set up to turn votes from one side to the other, originally in the favour of Hugo Chavez, they claimed, but in this case had been redeployed to help Joe Biden. The evidence on that, too, turned out to be so poor that Dominion Voting Systems sued Fox News for airing the claims repeatedly, and Fox News wound up paying $787.5 million US in a settlement to get out of it. That tells you all you need to know about how credible those claims were.
He'd fired the warning shots that he wouldn't go down without a fight.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
A sitting president in the White House undermining his country's election process.
This is a case where they're trying to steal an election. They're trying to rig an election.
Hurling unfounded, widespread allegations.
We'll not allow the corruption to steal such an important election, or any election for that matter. And we can't allow anybody to silence our voters. and manufacture results.
His target, the mail-in vote, millions of them in a pandemic election.
We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually, and then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret. We were up by nearly 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. In Georgia, I won by a lot.
States still counting all day. The changing numbers left to his own party to explain.
In Pennsylvania, Democrats voted by mail and Republicans voted by in person. And it's because you asked them to do so. Democrats voted by mail. That's why your lead went away.
Major American networks cut off the primetime speech.
And we have to interrupt here because the president has made a number of false statements, including the notion that there has been fraudulent voting.
And we're not going to allow it to keep going because it's not true.
David, there is simply no evidence that has been presented.
He is trying to plan an alternate route to retain the White House.
He's the most powerful person in the world, and we see him like an obese turtle on his back, flailing in the hot sun.
He'd laid the groundwork for this battle.
And this election will be the most rigged election in history. Only fake ballots all over the place. I've been talking about mail-in voting for a long time. It's really destroyed our system. It's a corrupt system.
2 days after the vote, with his path narrowing, that's broadened to claims of conspiracy.
These really phony polls, I have to call them phony polls, fake polls, were designed to keep our voters at home, create the illusion of momentum for Mr. Biden.
We haven't seen the president since election night, and he hasn't left the White House in days. But right now, he is making sure that this is a narrative, a story where he remains the headline.
Only hours earlier, his rival spoke first, calm and measured.
I ask everyone to stay calm, all the people to stay calm. The process is working. The count is being completed, and we'll know very soon.
At least 69 million Americans have voted for Trump, 5 million more than 4 years ago.
We think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country.
There are reports of problems with the mail-in system.
2 days ago, the attorney general there from Arizona found 18 unopened ballots hidden under a rock. Now, those ballots have since been returned, but it just shows you how vulnerable mail-in voting is.
The president winning legal action in Philadelphia, claiming observers weren't close enough to watch the count.
People are using binoculars to try and see.
The strength of the integrity of this vote is really unparalleled.
An attack leaving so many questions. President Trump took none.
Mr. President, are you going to accept the outcome of the election, sir, if you lose?
Every vote counts. Count every vote.
Protesters protecting votes.
Where are the votes? Where are the votes?
Two camps divided. One group demanding counting continue, while others call for counting to stop. Near Phoenix, dozens of Trump supporters gather outside the elections building, some trying to get inside.
The poll workers have to be escorted out by armed sheriff's deputies.
In Detroit, self-proclaimed election challengers tried to storm the room where votes are being counted. 50 protesters were arrested in New York after a peaceful rally turned violent.
And every vote has to count?
Donald Trump now sending in the lawyers to stop the count, with an avalanche of cheating and rigging claims, suing in Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and now Nevada.
These mail ballots, they could be from Mars as far as we're concerned. Joe Biden could have voted 50 times.
This is fraud. This is absolute fraud. We've seen it in Philadelphia before. They're trying to make a mockery of the election of this country.
As Joe Biden edges ahead in the battle for the White House.
I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
A divided America with no leader decided.
2020 was already a year of drama, unexpected events, and so much turmoil, so perhaps no surprise that the presidential election was not going to end in a simple, cut-and-dried way. On election night, it was too close to call, and that was partly because of what had happened with COVID, that there were a lot of people who voted remotely, they voted by mail, and so the number of votes that were counted on the night versus the number of votes that still had to be counted meant things weren't necessarily clear. Not all the states were counted. Some of the counting kept changing. So On election night, it was still up in the air as to what was happening. The count's still underway, but what immediately happened was Donald Trump calling foul, saying that this was some kind of corrupt thing, that votes were being hidden, that the count was being changed, and it was language that his supporters soon picked up. And so over the coming days, suddenly there were lawsuits across the country challenging the vote. There were allegations that ballots were being dumped in rubbish bins and corruption among election officials. And his supporters picked that up, and so they were protesting. Stop the Steal was their slogan, for fear that Donald Trump was about to lose. Election officials were flabbergasted by this. I mean, they'd been working for years, as they always do, to prepare for this election, to prepare for this key ideal, this key part of the United States, this democratic choice. And now the very process was being thrown into chaos by the protesters, by the lawsuits from Trump and his supporters. And so it took several days because the count was slowed down by the ballots that had been mailed in because of COVID. And so it was 4 days before finally the last state, Pennsylvania, was called for Joe Biden. That meant Donald Trump couldn't win, Joe Biden had it. And the effect, I remember that morning in Philadelphia, was instant. That morning the news came out, the count had been declared for the state. The downtown of Philadelphia was filled with people celebrating. San Francisco, Washington, D.C., cities across the country, there was massive turnouts of people relieved, I think, that there was finally an election result, and for them, relieved that that result was Joe Biden had been elected. But as we now know, it was just the start of a fight against that election result from Donald Trump and his supporters.
After 4 years and 4 days of waiting,
we won! You know what? Goodness won!
This is the result tens of millions of Americans were counting on. The Capitol dancing to a Democrat president.
Today! Oh my God! Seriously! Oh, thank you!
His supporters excited Donald Trump's first and only term is now ending. That same euphoria repeated in cities across the US. Democrats looking forward to what's coming.
We believed in our hearts that Biden was best for the United States.
In Chicago and in front of his hotel, they cheered. In the city where Trump made his name, they sang. And in the state that delivered for his opponent, pedestrians party, a blue celebration every time the light changed from red.
The news spread like wildfire throughout Philadelphia. Within minutes of Joe Biden being declared the winner, people flocked here to the City Hall, taking to the streets, taking over the streets to celebrate.
Everybody started coming out of their buildings, out of their apartments, cheering, yelling, honking. It was amazing.
Awesome! I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off our shoulders.
And I'm already hopeful in 2024 that Kamala Harris is the next president.
Pennsylvania tipped the Electoral College scales in Joe Biden's favor. But among the celebrations, legal votes! Trump supporters, this lone man confronted in the crowd, those penned in were taunted, protected by police.
Supreme Court! Supreme Court! Supreme Court!
And refusing to back down.
What's your feeling at the moment?
I feel great. The other side, they actually believe that a news agency can tell them who the president is.
And then they start dumping these fake ballots in there. They're going to find them all out.
In Michigan, some simply wouldn't accept the result. In several other cities, albeit in smaller numbers, so-called Stop the Steal rallies took place.
You committed voter fraud! Cheaters!
And it's fully proof that the press is manipulating and propagandizing this whole election.
But the night belonged to Team Biden, hoping for the next 4 years at least,
Go Biden! Go Biden!
America will march to a different beat.
A president-elect inheriting a pandemic.
I will spare no effort to turn this pandemic around once we're sworn in on January 20th.
On the day America cracked 10 million cases of coronavirus, Joe Biden laid out a plan to steer the country through, hammering home the most basic measures.
As we work toward a safe and effective vaccine, we know the single most effective thing we can do to stop the spread of COVID is wear a mask.
And naming his task force.
This group will advise on detailed plans built on a bedrock of science.
The Trump administration with its own meeting and its own task force. Vice President Mike Pence heaping praise on his boss for a vaccine breakthrough, despite Pfizer receiving no federal funds for the development or research. From the White House, the president questioned the timing of its release. The FDA and the Democrats didn't want to have me get a vaccine win prior to the election, so instead it came out 5 days later, he wrote. Going on a purge today, sacking his defence chief on Twitter. Again, railing against the election result. Nevada is turning out to be a cesspool of fake votes, he wrote.
We want to protect the franchise of the American people. We want an honest, accurate, lawful count. We want maximum sunlight. We want maximum transparency.
The White House spokesperson muted minutes in by the president's channel of choice.
Well, I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this.
Publicly, he's challenging the result, but privately, it's reported Donald Trump's telling aides he's already looking forward to a potential run in 2024. Presidents can only serve 2 terms, but they don't need to be concurrent. Still, the president's pushing ahead with litigation.
And President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
The Attorney General late tonight authorising federal prosecutors to investigate clear and apparently credible allegations of irregularities.
This election is over. It's time to put aside the partisanship and the rhetoric that designed to demonize one another.
The longest stretch of the Trump presidency without an appearance on camera. It ended with this update on a COVID vaccine.
The vaccine will be distributed to frontline workers, the elderly and high-risk Americans immediately.
And the general population, he says, by next April. This as the US suffered a record 170,000 new COVID cases on Friday.
Whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be? I guess time will tell, but I can tell you this administration will not go to a lockdown.
That, the first public glimpse of doubt from Donald Trump over the outcome of last week's election.
It seems like he's finally beginning to move through the stages of grief. He got stuck in denial.
CNN projects that for the first time since Bill Clinton in 1992, the state of Georgia is blue.
TV networks have called the final 3 undecided states North Carolina for Donald Trump.
It's shameful that he is still in denial. The numbers couldn't be any clearer.
But Democrat Joe Biden wins Arizona and Georgia, pulling him well above the needed 270 Electoral College votes. The result, a perfect reversal of the 2016 win Donald Trump called
an Electoral College landslide. Had a tremendous landslide. It's really a landslide. We had a landslide.
President Trump is now looking to protesters to press his claim the election was rigged. He tweeted today he might even join one protest here tomorrow. With hindsight, election night 2020 looks like a really pivotal night for Donald Trump. He was in the White House. He had a number of aides and advisors around him and watching, obviously, the election results come in. There was a fair deal of confidence in the Trump camp, it seems, on that night in November that they could win, and they felt, in fact, they likely would. And that was the way the early vote count felt for those who were watching the US election results in the early hours. Trump did pretty well early. There was a defining time, though, about 11:15 Eastern US time in the evening. Fox News, which had, of course, long backed Donald Trump, was his TV network of preference. Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden. It tells you all you need to know about the Trump administration and the man himself, that they saw that as a treacherous act from Fox. What on earth were they doing, giving one of the swing states to Joe Biden at a critical stage on the vote count on the evening of the election? You'd think as a journalist we'd just see it as a natural matter of statistics and those clued into elections deciding when a state ought to be called. No, this was a matter of treachery. He called an extraordinary 2:20 a.m. press conference. I mean, what Western leader on an election night waits till 2:20 a.m. To call a press conference to discuss the results? But Donald Trump threw that convention out and did exactly that. Not only did he call it at that time, of course, he defied the election results. He said it had been rigged, that it had been stolen from them. He set in course a pattern that he's now never backed off. And looking at that night, it appears that his advisor, former Mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, who was at the White House that night, was particularly influential in telling Donald Trump that it appeared that the election had been rigged, that there were suspicious votes had been cast, that he really did need to push this line. Others of his advisors were counselling him not to. They were saying, don't go there, we shouldn't go there. But once the leader did in that press conference, he essentially locked in a course on the 2020 election that he stuck to until today that defies so much evidence to the contrary. Washington on edge. Trump's supporters and opponents clash near police barriers around the White House as the president heads to play golf. Earlier, he'd appeared to finally accept Democrat Joe Biden's victory 8 days ago. He won because the election was rigged. No vote watchers or observers allowed.
Is the president right now in this tweet conceding this election?
No, far from it. What he's saying is more, I guess you'd call it sarcastic.
Sure enough, a clarifying tweet. Joe Biden only won in the eyes of the fake news media. I concede nothing.
When your time is up, then it is your job to put the country first and think beyond your own ego.
And this Republican agrees. Donald Trump's old national security advisor has slammed party colleagues who've backed the president's effort to overturn the vote.
But he won't leave graciously, and he'll do a lot of damage in the meantime.
Prompting this. John Bolton was one of the dumbest people in government, a real dope. The White House transition remains stalled as the country's third wave of coronavirus roars to record levels. And yet the most prominent virus advisor here says President Trump has not been involved.
The last time the president was physically at a task force meeting was several months ago.
Joe Biden appeared at church today. The president-elect's inauguration is still 9.5 weeks away. Donald Trump's final G20 meeting. So what's on the president's mind? 13 minutes into the World Leaders Summit, his 89 million Twitter followers find out. Massive and unprecedented fraud. Still trying to turn the election he lost almost 3 weeks ago. President Trump headed for golf, skipping a leaders' meeting on the pandemic as it ravages his country.
This is faster. It's broader, and what worries me, it could be longer. And I think it's on all of us right now to make sure that it's not longer.
Americans join giant traffic queues for COVID tests, with the daily number of new cases poised to break through 200,000. The national death toll now above 255,000.
Apparently I got the Rona.
The president's eldest son speaking from isolation about his diagnosis.
I may have a couple days of solo time, and
There's only so many guns I can clean before that gets bored, so...
In the week ahead, America's Thanksgiving holiday. Authorities fear millions will press on with the typical travel and big family events. If they do, COVID cases are all but certain to surge higher still.
Nothing's stopping me. Nothing. I am nervous, but I want to be with my babies.
I feel safe to fly. I think we should all fly for Thanksgiving.
The Trumps counting down to a not-so-festive farewell. The president out of sight but giving the green light for a transition to a Biden administration. His formal approval in a tweet, but no concession. Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight and I believe we will prevail. Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that Emily and her team do what needs to be done with regard to initial protocols and have told my team to do the same. Emily Murphy, who holds the transition funds, now releasing them, as the Biden camp plans to, quote, gain a complete understanding of the Trump administration's efforts to hollow out government agencies.
Joe Biden.
The incoming Commander-in-Chief already down to business with the nation's mayors.
Thank you all again.
Earlier, announcing key cabinet picks, among them former Secretary of State John Kerry, returning to the world stage as a presidential envoy on climate, and the first woman picked to lead the nation's intelligence agencies and Treasury.
So do you expect Republicans to put up any significant roadblocks to your nominations?
Are you kidding me?
Why'd you go with national security first?
Because it's national security.
As yet another crucial state, Michigan, certified his win. Trump's embattled legal team calls it simply a procedural step, vowing to continue fighting what they call election fraud. Some of these lawyers are now turning on each other, and today, conservative media turned on them.
You announce massive bombshells, then you better have some bombshells.
I will introduce to you now, Mr. President, you are connected.
A bitter fight, baseless claims.
This election was lost by the Democrats. They cheated.
Donald Trump phoning into an event with Pennsylvania Republicans to challenge Joe Biden's victory.
We have to turn the election over because there's no doubt we have all the evidence, we have all the affidavits, we have everything.
Fraud claims thrown out by judges. Still, the post-election spectacle rolls on. Spearheaded by the former New York mayor.
I know crooks really well. You give them an inch and they take a mile, and you give them a mile and they take your whole country.
Today, one crook granted clemency, the president pardoning his first national security advisor Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Congratulations to General Flynn and his wonderful family, the president wrote. I know you will now have a truly fantastic Thanksgiving. Heading into the American holiday, the president-elect with a national address on a national crisis.
We need to remember, we're at war with the virus, not with one another.
As he looks to mend wounds at home and bolster relationships with key allies, Joe Biden will also have to navigate one of the most complicated relationships of all, China. President Xi Jinping becoming one of the last world leaders to congratulate him overnight. Releasing a statement saying he hopes the two nations will uphold the spirit of non-conflict, non-confrontation, mutual respect and win-win cooperation. A fractious relationship at an all-time low. Its future still uncertain in Joe Biden's America.
This may be the most important speech I've ever made.
A presidential transition unlike anything America's ever seen.
I went from leading by a lot to losing by a little. They said you could sign your name as Santa Claus and it would be accepted. This is normal, normal. Look, even here, normal. And then boom.
49 days before he's due to leave the White House, Donald Trump spent 46 minutes on Facebook raging about a rigged election.
It is statistically impossible that the person, me, that led the charge, lost.
Repeating claims of voter fraud debunked yesterday by his own Attorney General. A White House address adding weight to reports Trump's considering a preemptive pardon for himself, 3 of his children and his lawyer.
Now I hear that these same people that failed to get me in Washington have sent every piece of information to New York so that they can try to get me there.
Unwilling to accept the result of this election and eyeing off the next, Donald Trump will be back in campaign mode this weekend, holding a so-called victory rally in Georgia. President-elect Joe Biden has largely ignored Trump's claims, focused instead on a health crisis he's about to inherit.
We're likely to lose another 250,000 people dead between now and January. You hear me? Because people aren't paying attention.
There's no doubt that COVID completely derailed re-election for him. The election was so close, it's very possible without COVID he would have won. And we've often said, what if it was a year earlier or a year later? And I guess he's a politician. He always had his eyes on the prize. But there were those moments where people were dying and they just didn't care anymore about November. There were times people were saying, is there even going to be an election?
I have really good news. Today, our nation has achieved a medical miracle.
The late-night approval America's been praying for.
I am thrilled to report that the FDA has authorized the Pfizer vaccine.
Operation Warp Speed now in top gear, 100 million doses shipping out.
The first vaccine will be administered in less than 24 hours and soon end the pandemic once and for all.
In a country setting a frightening new record every other day.
Probably for the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to have more deaths per day than we had in 9/11 or we had in Pearl Harbor.
An impatient president had accused the drug regulator of being old, slow and playing games. Coupled with stunning reports, the White House Chief of Staff told FDA Chief Dr. Hahn to authorise the vaccine tonight or resign. Hahn labelled that an untrue representation of the phone call.
We have given Pfizer and other companies a great deal of money, hoping this would be the outcome.
But on the same day, another hope dashed.
Breaking news right now out of the U.S. Supreme Court.
President Trump's latest legal bid to prove he won the election thrown out. This was a long-shot lawsuit by the state of Texas, backed by Donald Trump and more than 100 House Republicans. But their bid to overturn the election results in 4 key battleground states was rejected by all 9 justices in a one-page ruling. For the first time, even referencing a future under Joe Biden.
I think that was a sort of couched in terms of, if in fact, but I don't think he was conceding anything in particular. He's still litigating.
Fraught from the start, the changeover between the current president's team and incoming team is growing tetchier.
We encountered obstruction,
including, Joe Biden says, from defence leaders on critical national security matters.
It's nothing short, in my view, of irresponsibility.
After talks with security advisers, the president-elect had a message for allies, likely to be noted in Canberra.
As we restore principles of American leadership on the global stage.
A pledge to repair alliances damaged through the Trump years, then joining those allies in standing up to China.
To hold China's government accountable for its trade abuses, technology, human rights and other fronts.
As well, he accuses the Trump administration of inflicting enormous damage on US security agencies, of hollowing them out. No response from the president. He remains in Florida, tweeting his claim November's presidential election must be overturned. Not according to his favourite newspaper.
A very fine newspaper, the New York Post.
Stop the insanity, demands the New York Post. You lost the election. The pro-Trump tabloid warns the president he risks finishing not as a revolutionary, but the anarchist holding the match. Others may yet applaud him, turning $600 pandemic relief payments into $2,000 cheques. The president having insisted on it, the more generous handouts for ordinary Americans are now before Congress. Campaigning again in Georgia, where he pulled off an unlikely victory 6 weeks ago.
We got to vote!
Incoming President Joe Biden now tries to wrestle control of the US Senate after Republican attempts to turn the state's result in 2 recounts.
Georgia certainly wasn't going to stand by and let Donald Trump or the state of Texas or anyone else come in here and toss out your votes.
This as several world leaders offered belated congratulations for the Biden election win, one of them Russia's Vladimir Putin. As well, top Republicans, influential Senate leader Mitch McConnell, largely silent since November's election, not anymore.
So today I want to congratulate President-elect Joe Biden.
We disagree on a lot of things. There's things we can work together on.
Losing his most powerful ally in Congress, a setback to President Trump's claim fraud cost him last month's election. His reaction? He headed online and on the attack, claiming tremendous evidence pouring in on voter fraud.
The president is still involved in ongoing litigation.
And for both the current and new president, personal decisions to make on the COVID vaccine, if and when to get vaccinated.
Well, the president currently at this moment has said he is absolutely open to taking the vaccine.
Dr. Fauci recommends I get the vaccine sooner than later.
Washington turns stormy as the Trump presidency nears an end.
Stop the steal! Stop the steal!
The president's supporters say this is their last stand.
Welcome to the revolution!
President Trump is pushing his vice president to ignite the revolution. He called Mike Pence to the White House after falsely claiming the vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. Other Republicans in Congress say they will break with tradition tomorrow and vote against certifying Joe Biden's presidency.
On January 6th, I will object to the Electoral College vote.
Georgia's two pro-Trump Republican Senate candidates are among them.
Come on in.
They faced voters today in two Georgia elections.
The Democrats need to win both these seats to take control of the Senate. Right now, Raphael Warnock is leading by 35,000 votes.
I am going to the Senate to work for all of Georgia.
The Congress is widely expected to weather Donald Trump's attack and confirm his replacement. Many worry, though, he's opened a Pandora's box, and partisan fighting will be the new norm here whenever America changes presidents. Yet there's a certainty among these protesters Donald Trump was cheated in November. And if Congress does not save him tomorrow, they believe something else will give.
Trump needs to be the president. I truly believe that. Biden needs to go to prison.
There'll be a war in this country. It's that simple.
January 6th was already to be an important day in the process of electing Joe Biden as president. It was the day where Congress was to confirm his election. A lot of pressure had been put on in the days before by President Trump on his vice president, Mike Pence, who had to oversee that process in the Congress, hoping that Pence would accept the vote of these false electors that Trump supporters had set up, and therefore hand the presidency, hand a second term to Donald Trump. The public pressure grew, and part of putting that public pressure on Mike Pence was calling this enormous rally on the ellipse on the southern edge of the White House on January 6th, before the official confirmation was to take place in Congress. And Donald Trump addressed that rally. I was there. It was a giant rally. They'd done a mammoth job, Trump supporters, of bringing tens of thousands in to hear the president speak. And the president's words at that rally now echo in US history. You need to fight for your nation, he said, otherwise you won't have a nation to fight for. And he implored his supporters to go to the Capitol to put pressure on the members of Congress who were voting to confirm the next US president, and in particular to put pressure on his vice president, Mike Pence, that was overseeing that process in the Capitol. The rally beforehand was peaceful, was very colourful. People there generally seemed very calm, supportive of Trump, obviously, but pretty calm, and there wasn't outward signs of problems in the rally itself until the group that decided to take up Trump's words and march on Congress got mobile and headed to Congress. And I remember following that group towards Congress, and one of them saying to me, this feels like the start of a civil war. And there was a real edginess, a nastiness, an aggression in that crowd. This was, if you like, that crowd of 30,000 had kind of self-selected to a group of core supporters who really meant to take up Trump's attack on the Capitol. They were pre-prepared for it. There were weapons for it. They were going hard. They were fired up by their hero to do it, regardless of what their hero thought he was motivating them to do. They were fired up to attack it. And as we know, that's exactly what they did.
USA! USA! USA!
Chaos at the heart of America's democracy. Unleashed by the president, Donald Trump supporters smashed their way into the US Congress. Furious over President Trump's November defeat, certain he was cheated and told they can reverse the result.
They work for us! They don't get to steal it from us. We respect the law. We were good people. The government did this to us. We were normal, good, law-abiding citizens, and you guys did this to us. We want our country back.
Hundreds overrun security. In the famous Rotunda, Capitol Police try to fight off any further incursions. And lawmakers grab gas masks, making a hasty retreat from the chamber.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we're being instructed to each of us get a gas mask.
America's leading politicians led into hiding and left to comfort one another, unsure what was happening.
Where are we going?
Rayburn.
Rayburn?
On the ground.
Descending the stairs and away from any danger, those stuck inside watch on as officers use furniture to barricade the doors.
Everybody stay down! Get down!
Terrified and praying. And this is why, just a few metres away, they were witnessing a final stand, guns drawn, officers ready to fire, desperate to keep the angry mob behind those doors. Outside the chamber, a woman is shot. A 14-year Air Force veteran, she would later die. All around, the stream of the aggrieved continued to flow into the building. As the mob mocked their traditions from the Speaker's chair and ransacked their offices.
Here you go, brother!
This, the nameplate of Trump enemy Nancy Pelosi.
I say yeah, and they need to bring him out and string him up.
Outside, tens of thousands weathered tear gas and applauded the invasion.
A die-hard American, I am tired of being a second-class citizen in my own country.
I just want to get your thoughts on what you think of that scene.
It was awesome. Stop the steal.
We want a 10-day audit of the entire election. Let's get it done. Then there will be peace. Then there will be civil rest. But until then, it's treason.
More than anything, this is a show of the political force that Donald Trump can enact on those who defy him. The Republicans have decided to stick with convention and refuse to try and overturn November's vote. Media became targets. Earlier, the president lit the fuse.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
There's a lot of tension right now. It could be a civil war breakout, for all I know.
There was already civil war among Republicans, many refusing to back their president.
If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral.
His presidential confirmation stalled. Joe Biden gave a presidential address.
I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege.
Instead, he went on Twitter.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace.
Washington under curfew and Capitol Hill's security finally bolstered, Congress returned.
Let's get back to work.
This, the building 4 years ago as it welcomed Donald Trump, and this today, 2 weeks before his presidency ends.
The final, terrible, indelible legacy of the 45th President of the United States, undoubtedly our worst.
Locked in the White House, support vanishing.
America would be better off if the president would resign or be removed from office.
The president has become unmoored, not just from his duty, nor even his oath, but from reality itself.
The resignations roll in from Trump's former chief of staff, now special envoy.
But I can't stay here. Not after yesterday. You can't look at that yesterday and think I want to be a part of that.
Then cabinet ministers, the education secretary and the transport secretary, who said the violence troubled me in a way that I simply cannot set aside. Blasted too by a once dear ally, former Attorney General Bill Barr, accusing Trump of betraying his office and his supporters. His nights here are numbered, his reputation now tarnished with blood and broken glass. Still, Donald Trump will leave Washington with a grip on the Republican Party base. Many of those who stormed the Capitol about to learn the price of their loyalty. Face after face, they're being identified, the FBI vowing to round up everyone. More than 50 have already been charged, one armed with a semi-automatic weapon and Molotov cocktails. The death toll now at 5. A Capitol policeman today succumbing to injuries from the clash. The woman shot dead inside was Ashley Babbitt. She filmed herself on the way there.
And it was amazing. We could see the president talk. We are now walking down the inaugural path to the Capitol building. 3 million plus people. God bless America, patriots.
But how they so easily invaded the American Capitol remains the stunning failure. Bursting past police barricades, they smashed into the building here, also swarming in from a second entrance. As the Vice President was evacuated from the Senate chamber, tear gas filled the famous rotunda. The mob waved Trump banners through the halls to the House chamber, and that armed standoff. Shocking images seen by the world. Then there's videos like this, police letting some of the crowd in.
We failed. We did not secure the Capitol.
3 security leaders have been forced to resign, including the Capitol Police Chief. Less than a quarter of his staff were rostered on yesterday, despite all the warnings of trouble. And inside, no one knows yet if sensitive material was stolen.
It is mind-boggling that such an event could occur.
Back on Twitter, the president talking directly to his base.
And to all of my wonderful supporters, I know you are disappointed, but I also want you to know that our incredible journey is only just beginning.
He will talk about running in 2024, but he will not run because he will fear defeat.
13 days left in power, but it's Trump's influence that's likely to linger on.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
It was 3 hours and 7 minutes between when he finished his speech to the crowd at the Ellipse and he finally did speak publicly. That 3 hours and 7 minutes, we know he largely spent in a room off the edge of the White House, watching live television, watching the violence unfold around the Capitol building. According to testimony, he was often rewinding his TV to watch in detail particular parts of the coverage. While this was going on, his aides, even his family, were trying to get word to him that he had to speak publicly. He had to calm down the crowd. Donald Jr. was, as we understand, texting Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, saying, "You've got to get the president to call this off. You've got to do this. This is destroying his legacy." That's a paraphrase of the texts that Donald Trump Jr. was sending to his dad's chief of staff. It took 3 hours and 7 minutes, and finally Trump made a statement that essentially said go home. Many saw it as merely mouth, but he did make the statement asking his supporters to go home. And part of the fury among congressmen and women was this sense that Donald Trump had actually sat in the White House and applauded as supporters tore through the US Capitol. Now, we don't know that he applauded, but that was certainly the sense, and he certainly took an awful lot of time to call off his supporters.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol.
Condemned around the world for unleashing yesterday's chaos, the destruction, terror, 5 dead.
An unprecedented assault on our democracy.
Donald Trump now deplores
The violence, lawlessness, and mayhem.
And the supporters who carried it out in his name
have defiled the seat of American democracy.
Trump, unrecognisable from yesterday.
They're pathetic Republicans. We will never concede. It's a pure theft. Third world countries, their elections are more honest. The weak Republicans, and that's it. We're going to walk down and I'll be there with you.
Some want the president and key allies
an actual fighter.
prosecuted for incitement.
Let's have trial by combat.
Inciting a mob to attack the Capitol.
Even fierce Trump allies are backing away.
His actions were the problem, not the solution.
A fellow Republican says Donald Trump's cabinet needs to dust off a rarely used amendment and dump him.
It's time to invoke the 25th Amendment and to end this nightmare.
Democrats say do it, or they'll move to end his presidency by impeaching him. Never mind, Donald Trump only has 13 days left in the job.
The president has committed an unspeakable assault on our nation and our people.
Also moving against the president, the social media companies he both hates and is heavily reliant on. Twitter banned him for 12 hours, Facebook and Instagram for a fortnight, and maybe indefinitely. And Donald Trump signalled he's dropping the campaign to stop Joe Biden becoming president.
A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th.
Those who are working in this building are working to ensure an orderly transition of power.
Neither the president nor his spokesperson are taking questions.
Haley, where's the president?
No one wants to take responsibility for this. The stately offices of the Capitol building. Ransacked one day, left to the cleaners the next. This, the Speaker's office this morning, the chambers of Trump nemesis Nancy Pelosi, singled out by some in the attack.
Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists.
The Capitol building hopelessly exposed, now fortified. Police there in force, the compound rapidly fenced, the city under a state of emergency until after Joe Biden is inaugurated, and the Trump years are over. Anger meets fear. Just released phone video of the chilling seconds where Trump supporters are about to storm
There's a gun! There's a gun! There's a gun!
the Speaker's lobby in Congress. Then the shot that kills 35-year-old Californian Ashley Babbitt, one of 5 to die in the midweek riot after President Trump told tens of thousands to march on the Capitol building.
What this president has done is rip the Band-Aid all the way off to let the country know who he is.
Today, Congress lowered its flag for another of the 5, police officer Brian Sicknick. The repercussions are sweeping through the Trump White House. Staff quitting, former staff distance themselves.
You would feel safer today if President Trump resigned and Vice President Mike Pence took over?
I would.
Others worry Donald Trump is dangerous, like Twitter. Today, the social media giant slammed the door on the world's 6th most followed account, @RealDonaldTrump, permanently suspended. Why? The risk of further incitement of violence.
You don't have a First Amendment right to shout fire in a crowded theater. And that is essentially what the president has been doing.
The battery's gone from his online loud hailer. Donald Trump went on the president's official Twitter account. Twitter has joined the Democrats and radical left to silence me. Twitter then removed the tweets. The US president held back from using the US president's account.
I don't think it's over yet. It's never going to be over.
This Trump supporter insists the president's followers did not vandalise Congress, rather leftist extremists did it.
It's mind-boggling that you guys are actually putting a bunch of fake crap on TV.
The FBI says there was no leftist element, its investigation leading to dozens of Trump supporters arrested, one of them Richard Barnett, the Arkansas man who grinned as he took over Nancy Pelosi's desk. The House Speaker and fierce Trump rival is now leading the push to impeach the president, remove him in his final 12 days. The resolution to do it could be introduced as soon as Monday. Here, in the very building his supporters attacked.
The president has disregarded his oath of office. What he did was wicked.
There is no way we're going to impeach the president. There's not the time to do it.
But Nancy Pelosi sounded the ultimate alarm after talks with America's highest-ranking military officer. An unstable president, she says, could initiate military hostilities or order a nuclear strike.
The only way we can hold him accountable and remove this dangerous man from office is to, in fact, impeach him.
In one of his last pre-blackout tweets, Donald Trump confirmed he will not attend Joe Biden's January 20th inauguration, the first departing president to skip his successor's start since 1869.
One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
Turning on America's men in blue, the mob that calls themselves patriots. Brandishing an American flag as a weapon to savagely beat a police officer, bludgeoned and left face down on the steps of the Capitol. The bloody clash at the entrance to Congress. The rioters' weapons of choice seen up close, baseball bats, bits of furniture and even a door. Also outnumbered inside, this officer resorting to taunts. Praised for using himself as live bait to lure the frenzied crowd away from the Senate chamber doors.
Check this out, we are inside her Nancy Pelosi's office.
But the mob did make it to the Speaker's office.
The evidence is now that it was a well-planned, organized group with leadership.
Nancy Pelosi revealing her staff were hiding in another room.
The staff went under the table, barricaded the door, turned out the lights, and were silent in the dark,
listening as the group pounded the door. While others, proud of having hijacked the building, attempted to call the president to gloat from inside the Capitol.
Let's call Trump, yes!
They trampled the very principles on which our country was founded.
Democrats now ready to trigger impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump for inciting the violence, as more Republicans call for his resignation.
It's the best path forward, the best way to get this person in the rearview mirror.
America is still picking up the pieces from Wednesday's siege and counting the cost of the violence. This a somber moment outside the Capitol where Officer Brian Sicknick worked and ultimately lost his life. A dedicated officer and Trump supporter, the White House flag now finally lowered to half-mast. His father's message that if any good comes out of my son's death, I just hope that it stops all the lunacy that's been going on in this country.
These people were being encouraged to do this. I think the fact they did it might have shocked people, but the entire environment that surrounded it was not shocking at all. Again, absolutely terrifying scenes, but the basis of it was that undermining of democracy, that to lose and then to just say, no, I didn't lose. If a child behaved like that after a game, you would reprimand them. But this was the leader of the free world just denying the election result. It was incredibly damaging, and it's something that's continued to undermine democracy and politics in the United States. People I still speak to over there have said how damaging it is because people just won't accept results that they don't like anymore. That's not how it works.
Donald Trump on the brink of an historic vote in Congress.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Set to make him the first ever US president impeached twice.
The impeachment is really a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in the history of politics.
This his first appearance since the speech
I'm going to walk down and I'll be there with you
that ignited the deadly Capitol Hill riot.
What I said was totally appropriate.
In Texas to sign and talk up his border wall, not a hint of regret or responsibility for the attack on Congress.
We believe in the rule of law, not in violence or rioting.
And brushing off the amendment that might have been used to sack him.
The 25th Amendment is of zero risk to me, but will come back to haunt Joe Biden and the Biden administration. As the expression goes, be careful what you wish for.
His Vice President Mike Pence then ruled it out, saying, "I will not play political games at a time so serious in the life of our nation." So impeachment moves ahead.
Donald Trump should not hold office one day longer.
At least 3 members of the president's own party now say they'll vote with the Democrats.
Free speech is under assault like never before.
And so once again, the White House is tonight heavily fortified ahead of Joe Biden's arrival here next week. The threat's not over here in the nation's capital. Police are bracing for more trouble. And today, the FBI had this warning to those who stormed the Capitol.
Agents from our local field offices will be knocking on your door. In 6 days, we have opened over 160 case files, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
The Bureau says the day before the attack, it had intelligence a war was coming to the Capitol and warned police. Now warning of chilling new threats, private chat rooms and plans for future attacks. A historic chapter in Trump's turbulent legacy sealed. The first American president ever to be impeached twice, charged with inciting insurrection 1 week after the bloody invasion of America's capital.
I want to be very clear. I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week.
He watched from the White House before a 5-minute scripted plea from the Resolute desk.
No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. No true supporter of mine could ever disrespect law enforcement or our great American flag. No true supporter of mine could ever threaten or harass their fellow Americans. If you do any of these things, you are not supporting our movement, you are attacking it, and you are attacking our country.
A dramatic shift.
Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore.
That came too late.
He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
Donald Trump is the most dangerous man to ever occupy the Oval Office.
Starting with impeaching the white supremacist in chief.
He must be prevented from ever attempting to seize power again.
On the House floor, impassioned debate, a vote at warp speed.
A vote to impeach would further divide this nation.
It's not just about impeachment anymore, it's about canceling, as I've said.
It's a very sad time in the history of our country. No one is celebrating.
Unlike round one, this wasn't on party lines. 10 Republicans broke ranks.
I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
I will vote yes on these articles of impeachment.
Donald Trump will now face a second trial by Senate with just 7 days left in office. He'll be gone before it begins.
Donald Trump owns 1/2 of all the presidential impeachments in history.
They are few. Andrew Johnson, 1868, impeached for sacking a cabinet minister without approval, acquitted by the Senate. 1973, Richard Nixon came close. Impeachment proceedings began over Watergate, but went nowhere.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
He quit first, was pardoned later. Bill Clinton, 1998.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The Lewinsky denial that had him charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. He was acquitted. 2019, Donald J. Trump, the first trial, abusing power and obstructing Congress, accused of pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, acquitted easily. Now impeached again twice in 13 months, this time on shakier ground. The Republican Senate leader admitting he doesn't know which way he'll vote, as the nation visibly braces for round two.
It's a scene you'd expect to see for a nation at war, a level of security likened to the days post 9/11. This time, though, it isn't a foreign threat. This is America turning on America.
Today I am calling on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment and join together as one American people. We will get through this challenge, just like we always do.
Washington on edge. The US Capitol complex thrown into lockdown.
Due to an external security threat.
Officials then realise the threat is in fact a small fire more than a kilometre away. Rehearsals resume for Thursday morning's unique, crowdless inauguration. The people replaced in Washington's Mall with a field of 200,000 state and national flags.
How's the speed training going? Have you finished your speech?
Officials concede the FBI is helping check all 25,000 personnel securing the change of presidents for fear some belong to right-wing extremist groups.
As we've seen, sometimes the enemies are a little closer to home.
The inside threat already made real with news one of those arrested in the Capitol Hill attack is from the same National Guard now securing the city. Also setting this inauguration apart, the current president has decided to skip it. He's the first to do that in more than 150 years. Donald Trump is widely expected to announce a raft of pardons tomorrow, then spend his final hours as president flying to Florida.
Always remember that violence is never the answer and will never be justified.
From the First Lady, a farewell message.
To all the people of this country, you will be in my heart forever.
As removal trucks arrived at the Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort.
It really was an administration that never quite organised a handover for many weeks after the election. That was because the president didn't acknowledge he'd lost. He was planning on staying. He was organising to stay. So at least up until January 6th, there was no acknowledgement from Mr. Trump that he was actually going. We also know, though, that down to within a couple of days of leaving, there basically things remained very much in place in the White House. They hadn't been prepared for any changeover to a new administration to any degree, and it did really become a great scramble at the end to get out. This period would also become fascinating because, of course, so many government documents that were meant to be sent to the National Archives right at that time as the administration left turned up in boxes years later, scattered right through Mar-a-Lago, and are now at the centre, of course, of one of the court cases against Donald Trump, charged with his failure to give up government documents, some of them deeply secret and no doubt troubling to allies like Australia.
As the sun set over a lonely Lincoln Memorial, the president in waiting paused for just a minute longer. A sombre ceremony, Joe Biden's first stop in Washington.
To heal, we must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal.
Mourning 400,000 American lives lost to the pandemic. Hallelujah. As Donald Trump,
my fellow Americans,
delivered his parting words from the White House.
I took on the tough battles, the hardest fights, the most difficult choices because that's what you elected me to do.
Spending his final hours as Commander-in-Chief granting clemency to 143 people, a full pardon for former strategist Steve Bannon, charged with defrauding Trump supporters over border wall fundraising, and to rapper Lil Wayne on weapons charges as the president prepares for a trial of his own. Accused of inciting the Capitol riot that's come to define his final days.
The crime, in some cases, was murder. Yeah. And this president is an accessory to that crime.
The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president.
The strongest rebuke yet from a once loyal ally.
Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish as Americans.
Advice for his successor.
The world respects us again. Please don't lose that respect.
Without mentioning Biden by name.
We extend our best wishes, and we also want them to have luck.
It was third time lucky for Joe Biden to win a presidential race. Today, he left Wilmington for Washington in tears.
Excuse the emotion, but when I die, Delaware will be written on my heart.
Soon to be sworn in as America's 46th Commander-in-Chief, a number not lost, standing at the base, named for his late son Beau, a war veteran who died of brain cancer at 46.
I only have one regret. He's not here, because we should be introducing him as president.
When he does take the oath of office, there'll be more troops than spectators to witness it. 12 of them now pulled from duty.
Just out of an abundance of caution, we want to make sure that there's no issues.
In a matter of hours, the Trumps will have a bird's eye view of this now militarised city, set to hold a farewell ceremony before heading down to Florida. Donald Trump to become the first president in over 150 years to boycott an inauguration.
For weeks, Americans have wondered whether Donald Trump would leave the White House voluntarily.
A great honour.
Today, they watched it happen. An echo of another president who left in turmoil, Richard Nixon, after Watergate.
There's the president waving goodbye.
Donald Trump having none of it.
What we've done has been amazing by any standard.
But always close to controversy, his final months were consumed by turbulence.
The outbreak of a mystery virus in China.
We have it totally under control.
From the pandemic seriously out of control to insisting fraud cost him November's election, the result of his 2-month campaign to change the outcome. 5 dead, and a Congress so shaken it impeached him for a record second time.
I will always fight for you. I will be watching, I will be listening, and I will tell you that the future of this country has never been better.
At Andrews Air Force Base, several hundred farewelled the President and First Lady.
Being your First Lady was my greatest honour.
Missing?
The Honourable Michael R. Pence.
Donald Trump's Vice President went to the inauguration.
Obviously some appreciation that they are abiding by norms.
While President Trump broke 150 years of tradition, ditched the niceties of welcoming the Bidens to the White House, and flew out before his successor took the oath.
This great man that has done so much for our country, it means a lot.
The Trumps welcomed to their new home in Palm Beach, Florida.
I'm happy for him to finally retire, to have some peace, to be away from the swamp.
Unanswered as Donald Trump begins his time here as an ex-president. Whether he'll try for the White House again in 2024, he teased the idea this morning.
So just a goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
I'm heartbroken.
Donald Trump now faces tax investigations and a second Senate impeachment trial. Air Force One departed above his Mar-a-Lago resort, a reminder he no longer has the legal protection enjoyed by presidents.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States.
His hand on the family's 19th century Bible.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
a 30-year senator and 2-term vice president.
That I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
Joe Biden reached his dream at 78 years of age.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The 46th and oldest inaugurated president.
This is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve.
At the very building stormed in a day of deadly violence just 2 short weeks ago, President Biden inherited a deeply fractured America, vowing he's driven to part the dark clouds.
Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. Distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war.
He spoke before almost every other living president, Obama, the Clintons, George and Laura Bush. But the most recent one had already long gone. Donald Trump left the White House almost 4 hours earlier. His divisive presidency over.
Have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you.
A final Air Force One flight to Florida, a blaring soundtrack, the full stop on a single turn. Trump's once loyal deputy had chosen to be at the Capitol, Mike Pence, honouring his vow to oversee this peaceful transition.
My whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. We can make America once again the leading force for good in the world.
Flags fluttered where a sea of people would have filled the National Mall. Just a small smattering of special guests, a podium wiped down.
And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Amen.
To more than 70 million Americans who didn't vote his way, many who still believe this election was stolen, he asked for a chance.
Hear me out as we move forward. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America.
A nation that made more history in this moment.
I, Kamala Devi Harris, solemnly swear.
The daughter of an Indian scientist and a Jamaican academic.
So help me God.
Became America's first female vice president.
Vice President Kamala Harris, don't tell me things can't change. Thank you, America.
Even without the usual audience, the Capitol rolled out a show. Lady Gaga, Jennifer Lopez.
This land was made for you and me.
And country music star Garth Brooks.
Amazing grace.
Clearly a presidential favourite, recalled for more hugs with the past ones he forgot. Bernie Sanders briefly stole the show, taking selfies in his less than formal attire, and a televised concert replaced the inaugural balls, not quite the traditional dance for the first couple.
It's a new dawn, it's a new day.
It all went ahead without a hitch, no signs of trouble, chaos replaced by pageantry. And the solemn job ahead of this new Commander-in-Chief, starting by honouring America's war dead at Arlington National Cemetery. Then straight to the office. In the Beast with the newly minted number plates, he headed for the White House, a slow roll on a parade route minus the crowds. Safe enough for America's new first family to emerge and walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, stopping for fist bumps and thank yous for the few people there.
What does this moment feel as you're about to walk into the West Wing?
returning years after he left as the second in charge. But unlike past handovers, the Clintons to the Bushes, Bushes to Obamas, and 4 years ago, the Obamas to the Trumps, there was no one to greet the Bidens. Leaving the new first family with the house to themselves. The job for Joe Biden now, turning campaign promises and rhetoric into reality. The president wasting no time rolling back Donald Trump's policies on his first day in office. 17 executive orders signed in the Oval Office. Mandatory masks in federal spaces, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, ending the travel ban on mostly Muslim countries, and cutting off funding to Trump's proudest construction, the wall. There was one tradition Donald Trump kept. He left a note for Joe Biden in the Resolute desk.
The president wrote a very generous letter. It's because it was private. I will not talk about it until I talk to him.
First, he called in new appointees and made it clear.
If you're ever working with me and I hear you treat another colleague with disrespect, talk down to someone, I promise you I will fire you on the spot.
There's a new president and a new tone. America's Biden era begins.
Looking back at especially the last couple of years of the Trump presidency, I think it's fair to say the United States saw more division, but also less trust. They saw from the leadership in the White House someone who routinely went against what was happening in the Justice Department, went against the intelligence community. During COVID, would be challenging what health authorities were saying. Pillars of American society or Western democratic societies, these key government areas or areas of expertise, Donald Trump would take a swipe at and encourage his supporters to take a swipe at. His fake news criticism of the mainstream media, and when we were at Trump rallies, we'd be there shooting with the rest of the media, and there would be times when they'd all be turning to us and yelling fake news at us because that's what Donald Trump had told them to do, and they were getting on board with that. These institutions that are key to the United States and the way it works were all being challenged. And so they went through COVID with less trust of doctors and health authorities, which I think harmed the COVID response. Questions about how the justice system worked were called into question by the commander-in-chief. Questions about how the military was operating were also called into question in some ways. So I think America ended the Trump presidency with more division, but less trust in institutions that were at the core of how the country worked.
My entire time in the US was Trump's America, and to see it disintegrate to what it did is saddening. There are beautiful people in the US. It's something that with our pop culture, we grow up looking up to the United States, especially as our closest ally. And to be standing in front of the White House, literally surrounded by civil unrest, was something that I certainly didn't expect my stint there to be wrapping up with. It's sad to look back on. I don't know whether it could happen again. I don't know how much COVID was a factor, how much the many different things that went wrong in 2020 contributed to that overall outcome, but it was terrifying to be there for it. I think it's made me even more determined to defend our role and how important it is. We can't be standing a few streets away trying to tell you what's happened, because we won't see it and it won't be entirely true. We won't know if there were warnings because we won't have heard them. We won't know if that person threw something at a police officer because we have to be there to see it. And to do that, we have to be safe. There has to be an understanding that when we're there, you can't touch us. It's our right to be there, but also it's the right of the people at home to know what is going on. And it's so important for democracy. And the undermining of democracy was something we really saw in 2020, and also, of course, then with January 6th, that was very, very concerning. As someone who's very passionate about what I do, I believe in what I do and how important we are to democracy.
A couple of things stand out in particular in terms of the trends over recent years. One is the polarisation we were talking about just seems to get deeper, and the polarisation produces results that really you wouldn't predict. I mean, as Donald Trump left office, he said, "We will be back in some form." Back then, that felt and looked pretty trite, and you'd say, well, he's got to say something like that, hasn't he? But yeah, fat chance. Here we are now, heading into the 2024 election, and he's the Republican nominee, at least he will be formally after the Republicans meet mid-year to give him that title. And opinion polls suggest, if anything, he's ahead of President Biden in the run for the next presidency. It's an extraordinary situation. It shows how firmly that base that we've talked about backs Donald Trump. He has done a remarkable job of bringing back Republicans who'd just done away with him, particularly after January 6th. They simply couldn't countenance what he'd done. And yet the force of his support, and that's what it is, it's Republicans knowing just how strongly those core conservatives in this country support Donald Trump. The force of that support has made Republicans who'd abandoned him basically eat their words and drop back into supporting him.